Hey, what's happening? It's Jeff Pish behind the kit. Today, we're talking about ghost notes. I got a question last week about from somebody follows the channel about how do I get that ghost note feel to be natural, and how to get those head bopping grooves happening. So I'm gonna break some things down, and we'll start from square one and see what we can build here. So let's get into it. So first thing, the most important thing about ghost notes is control of the levels. So your ghost notes down there, versus your accented notes, which are going to be there. So those volume levels inherently make things groove. It's just how it is. Soft versus loud gives shape, even if it's just that. Every alternating things, it gives it a shape. It gives it that dynamic value, if you will, and we shall. So great. So now we have an understanding of what those volume levels are. So we want nice and light versus our accented backbeats, if we're working on like a rock and roll backbeat. Next element, if we're working on like a hi-hat groove, we want to think about the volume of the hi-hat. That offers a different feel than that. Interesting. So we want to be detailed about and have intent on the things that we're doing in each area. So how we're talking about ghost notes versus accents. We want to talk about loud hi-hat notes versus soft hi-hat notes, and how those play into what the groove feels like. All right, so let's check it out. So for the first bit, point one, we're just going to go with comfortable medium level hi-hat sound. We're going to put 2 and 4 on our accents on the snare drum, and we're going to add 1 ghost note on the E of 1. So your hands are going to go like this, nice and slow. 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's where the ghost note's in. And then we're going to have 2 and 4 accents. So 1 E and 3 and 1 E and 3 and 4 and. All right. Now, just for the sake of it, since we're building groove here, and this is a quick lesson. I'm going to put the kick on 1 and 3, just for what we're focused on right now is starting to learn how to create grace notes in our groove. So here we go. I'm going to put a metronome on this. Actually, we're working at a nice groovy 85 BPM. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're just going to sit with that for a while. Like, don't rush this. 85 is nice and laid back. It's not super, super slow, but it's just in a nice, comfortable tempo that you'll be able to sit in that phrase and just get comfortable with concentrating on that first ghost note that we're adding in there. All right. Now, next step, we're going to add that same ghost note to the E count of 3. So 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and. So it's just repeating our 2-beat pattern, a 2-count pattern. All right, let's check that out. 2, 3, 4. All right, so there's that. There's part two in the step two, I should say, in getting into some ghost note, initial ghost note vibes. Now you can even hear here, I wasn't perfectly on the money timing wise with everyone, so I need to be conscious of that and make sure I'm concentrating at this slower tempo like this and make it comfortable and be accurate with it. Be critical of yourself. Be honest about it. If you're out of time, you're out of time. It's kind of black and white there if you're working on playing with the metronome. And that's what we're doing here. Eventually we'll discuss at some point, how to create vibes by pushing and pulling within the metronome. But right now we're just looking at accuracy and getting comfortable with coordination. So that's the first thing to ghost notes, is finding that coordination, getting comfortable kinesthetically, if you will, and we shall, with this pattern. All right. So now work that 100 times slow like that. You want to start to get to the point, the first milestone, if you will, is getting the hi-hat eighth notes out of your brain. A lot of what we do behind the drums is, independent things, coordination, but if you can take a piece, especially when we're working on grooves, if you can take one piece of the groove and clear that out of your brain and just let muscle memory take over, kinesthetic memory, let that muscle memory take over, then that frees up some bandwidth, to use the parlance of our times, in order to get creative with the left hand. So if I'm here, I don't have to think about that. I can sit here, have a conversation with you, and my right hand just understands how to play eighth notes. I've played millions of eighth notes in my day. So being able to just let that go on autopilot is, again, it frees up the brain space so that I can concentrate on improvising with the left hand, improvising with the bass drum, improvising with my left foot, even on the hi-hat, and trying different things. Cool? Cool. Next, let's add another ghost note. So we've got the E. Let's add the and to that. So 1 E and. All right. So there again, coordination. If you have trouble, break it down slow like that. Just get it to feel comfortable. 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. Do that for a while. 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and, 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. And understand where those beats sit, against your eighth notes. All right. So now let's put the click on. We're going to do the 1 E and 2 backbeat, 3 E and 4 on with the backbeat. All right. So let's check it out. Let me get this click going. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. All right. Again, there's a couple little inconsistencies in there on my part. That's all right for now. I'm trying to work through this and find some ways to help guide. I'm not necessarily perfection right now. It's all right. It's all right. We're getting loose. It's all right. We'll get there. I'll concentrate on it and fix it up. So now that already feels like totally different. So if we take those ghost notes out, let's see what that sounds like. I'm going to alternate, some with the ghost notes, and then I'm going to take them out, and you can just hear what that does. 2, 3, 4. So there's an absolute complete difference between with ghosts and without. And there's situations where without is going to be the most effective, and then there's situations where having the ghosties in there is going to be most effective. So you'll have to experiment, especially if you have the opportunity to record. Please, I always encourage everyone to record as much as you can when you're behind the kit, whether you're live, whether you're in your studio practicing or in your studio recording a session. Get that stuff on video, some audio. It doesn't have to be great audio, but just to study and see from the outside perspective of what your groove feels like, and what the differences are in subtle things that you change and experiment with. All right. So that's, in a nutshell, that's really how you get comfortable with ghost notes. You break it down slow, you find your coordination. The biggest key for me personally, again, this might not be for you. Everyone's different. Everyone's built different. Everyone learns differently. The biggest key for me when I was getting into the ghost note thing was getting the hi-hat out of my brain and just being able to naturally play over there without thinking about it. Same, or if I'm on the ride cymbal, if I'm playing eighth notes on the ride cymbal, any number of patterns on the hi-hat or ride, if I can eliminate one limb from what I'm doing and from my brain and concentration, then I can be free to improvise with other limbs. All right, makes sense? Let me know in the comments if that makes sense to you, or if it's totally foreign, or I'm totally out in some other planet to you. And all is good. All is good. This is just giving you my personal experience and how I've learned in things that I do. So now I'm going to bump the tempo up just a little bit here. And let's see if we can do that. Oh, we can. How about that? I'm going to go up. Let's go up to 105. All right. And let's see what that feels like. Again, I'm going to use the same pattern, and I'll alternate back and forth to without ghosties, and then add the ghosties in. And then we'll get to the final phase momentarily. All right, let's check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that, if you couldn't tell, that already feels more comfortable with me. This is an easier tempo. Sometimes faster is easier. And in this situation, 105, right? 105 is easier for me personally than 85 was for accuracy's sake. So this feels better to me at this tempo. So I need to work slow tempos more. That's what I've learned today. I need to work on my slow playing for accuracy. But not to digress too far into that, but you can hear how different those feels are. And just by adding those two little ghosties in there, it makes a pretty sizable difference in the feel of the groove. Even though, it's very simple, it's very basic, but it shows you what you can do in, generating shape within your groove. And that's how you create feel, is using these ghost notes or not using the ghost notes, depending on what the music feels like to you as a drummer. Don't let anyone ever tell you how you're supposed to play something. You find what's right for you. If you think the ghosties are good for that session, then hey man, let it be your own sound. Let it be your own sound. If you think the ghosties aren't working, dump them. And be open to suggestions. Like if someone says, hey, what if you tried ghost notes in there? You can throw some ghost notes in. And if you like it, you like it. It's getting suggestions is cool from others. I take suggestions all the time if I'm working with a band or an artist, and they say, hey, maybe try this. I'll absolutely try it and see what works. And sometimes it's a great idea and it's something that maybe I wouldn't have thought of, and it works out great. Other times it's like, I'm going to go with the other thing because it sounds a little hipper. But yeah, be open-minded like that, but don't necessarily let anyone dictate to you. Be open-minded, but also, hey, you know what? This feels better. Be able to speak up for yourself as well as a drummer back here. So now, the last step in the process truly is to become, to be able to build your own grooves using these concepts, the ghost note concept. And that comes after spending hours at the slow tempos. Like you could just sit there, like that's a great exercise actually. Just sit there, take the foots out of the equation, just play your eighth notes on the hi-hat and improvise eighth notes on the snare drum at the ghost note level. Let's try that. I'm just going to mess with it a little bit. And get comfortable with that. That's another good exercise for getting the right hand eighth notes out of your head and just being able to focus all your bandwidth on those ghost notes and different rhythms down there. All right. So then, I'm going to go ahead and put this click back on, and I'm going to go through three phrases. So we'll do one without ghost notes, one with our initial basic ghost note pattern, the E and, and then I'm going to improvise and try some different things and with as far as ghost notes and backbeats and see kind of what happens. So let's check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we have it. So that's, where you can get to. Again, this is just one iteration, one version, part A to getting into ghost notes, an introductory to it, and giving you examples of where to start and where you can eventually end up. all are good things. I always tell people, don't be afraid to play slow. Play slow, play slow, play slow, play slow. It's all good. You have to teach your muscles how to be coordinated within those, the control of the volumes. So you're creating these shapes and, being able to get that kinesthetic memory happening with the right hand on the hi-hat or left hand on the hi-hat, whichever version you want to play. So there it is. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you've got some cool ideas on how you learned how to play Ghost Notes and found some good feel out of using Ghost Notes. And as always, I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, all those fun YouTube things. And I hope you're having a fantastic day. And we'll catch you on the next one.